Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good, and you?
Good morning,
Good,
thanks and
good,
you.
good, good. Morning, Melissa, Modise. I see our attendees are giving thumbs up, so you guys can hear and see us and show us some love. No heart emojis, only thumbs up and who's that? We saw a heart emoji. Great, great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. We're just waiting for one of our members of the panel, Mr. Davids.
Ben, I'm here.
We can't see you. We saw you
Sorry.
putting on your makeup earlier on, but good. Who else is joining us now? All right, so quite a few of you guys signed up. There's still more that will obviously come through as we continue. All right, I think
Okay.
let's kick off, and then yeah. So guys, if you have questions, I'm sure you do. You can pop them in the Q&A or the chat, and then we'll try and get to that. Interesting questions, especially if you are someone who wants to get into the field for the first time. We look forward to your questions, and then no trick questions, theory questions, because I don't have my textbooks here. But yeah, no, feel free to ask whatever questions you want to do. Right. So let's get cracking. Guys, welcome. Welcome to Becoming an Environmental Lawyer. I'm your host, Kuben Sami. I practice as a trust account advocate, specializing in environmental law. And today we have a truly insightful and inspiring episode lined up for you. So we are going to basically dive into the world of environmental law, exploring the paths that our esteemed panel guests have taken, the challenges they've faced, and the immense rewards of a career dedicated to protecting our planet. Sounds interesting. But before we go ahead and before we begin our webinar, I just want to acknowledge the significant contribution of one of our departed colleagues. So I would like to acknowledge the significant contribution of Mr. Sibonelo Ndlovu, a respected environmental lawyer who played a very important role in shaping my career in environmental law. Mr. Ndlovu sadly passed on sometime in July this year, beginning of July, and his death has left a notable absence in South Africa's environmental law community. He was an exceptionally generous person in sharing his advice when I was transitioning into environmental law, and I will forever remain grateful for his guidance. My first experience with him was working on an administrative appeal in terms of NEMA, and I collaborated with him, and that was many, many years ago. As a managing partner of Ndlovu de Villiers attorneys in Pietermaritzburg, Mr. Ndlovu made a lasting impact and will be greatly missed by his colleagues and peers. We honor his memory and his legacy. And may his soul rest in peace. So yeah, so let's kick off. So today I'm particularly excited to be joined by my esteemed guests. First off, Melissa Strydom. Let me just give you a brief background of each of our guests, and then we'll move then into the discussion. So Melissa is an attorney with over 15 years of legal sector experience, specializing in environmental law and related areas. She consults to Warburton Attorneys Incorporated, as well as other clients. Her interest lies in environmental compliance and enforcement, which informed her doctoral research, which examined the use of criminal sanctions for pollution and impact-related offences in South Africa. She's also an honorary research fellow at the UKZN School of Law and a sessional lecturer at Wits. Outside the office, she is often chasing after a toddler or a good cup of coffee. So she's another one of those coffee addicts that we have to put up with today. Unfortunately, sorry guys, couldn't prevent that. Our next panel guest is Fuad Davids. He's an admitted attorney and a specialist in environmental law at HSG Attorneys. He obtained his LLB degree from University of Western Cape, and as well as completing his master's in environmental law with the same institution. And his focus of his research was on the use of criminal sanctions in prosecuting environmental crimes. So this guy, on Fridays in particular, so we managed to twist his arm and get him to the talk today. But usually on Fridays, you're more likely to find him on the golf course than in court. And when he's not in court, he's or on the golf course, he's busy experimenting with food and spices in the kitchen. Apparently, he wants to be like a master chef or something. But we'll test his experience out. And last but not least is advocate Modise Shakung. He's a practicing advocate, and he's been practicing as an advocate since 2021. And he has an LLB from Wits, an LLM from the Northwest University, where he focused on the protection of procedural rights of indigenous people in mining in South Africa. And Modise started his career at the attorneys Botha, Duplessis and Kruger Incorporated, whereafter he acted as in-house counsel for Kalahari Manganese, and then thereafter as senior legal advisor for Sasol at their Secunda operations and mining. Now, Modise is a staunch Chiefs and Liverpool supporter. And one day he hopes to give Fuad Davids a run for his money on the golf course. So there's a bit of some animosity between our two guests there. We'll try and pacify them. Right, so guys, the aim of the webinar and the aim of our discussion today is twofold. Firstly, we want to highlight we don't want to paint a rosy picture of environmental law and the practice, but it's basically to highlight the pros and cons of practicing as an environmental lawyer, giving you a realistic view of the profession. And then secondly, and obviously, to hear directly from our panel members about their unique journeys and experiences on their way to becoming impactful environmental lawyers that they are today. Right, so let's jump in. I want to start by exploring the genesis of your careers. It's often said that environmental law isn't a typical path for many law students, but what I wanted to know is what initially drew each of you to this particular field of law. What inspired you to become an environmental lawyer? Was there a particular case or particular issue or moment in your life that sort of sparked your interest in environmental law? Did you always know that this was a path for you, or is it something that you just stumbled upon? So we basically want to know, how did your interest in this career start? Melissa, maybe we can start with you.
Perfect. Sure. I wish I had a short answer. I didn't have environmental law as an elective as part of my undergrad studies, so I didn't really have much exposure at an undergrad level. I did articles at a general practice, so I got experience in wide-ranging matters. But there was a particular case that we were working on that concerned intellectual property of chemical substances and the chemistry behind it all. I come from a family of scientists and educators, so no lawyers in the family. But I was told my argumentation skills make me suitable for a career in law. But in any event, so the chemistry of it all was very interesting. In that particular case, I sort of dealt with she experts and a particular she expert within my family, dealing with the regulation of hazardous substances and material safety data sheets. And I found that extremely interesting, the chemistry and the science behind it all. And knew I wanted to specialize, but wasn't really sure where the law would take me. A lot of my contemporaries at the time were doing masters in international law, and I couldn't really understand, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to go work with the UN? What are you going to do locally, with that? But in any event, I knew I wanted to sort of progress my studies, and then started speaking to a lot of people. So like you, we do rely on those that have come before us. We seek advice, and, I'll be forever grateful to, the people who sort of pointed me in the right directions and who have supported me over the years and have mentored or trained, etc. But I had a discussion with a mining lawyer and then enrolled for the prospecting and mining course at WITS. And they sort of dealt with those Section 38 environmental provisions of the MPRDA and that overlap with environmental law, and found it extremely fascinating. It was very topical at the time, dealing with acid mine drainage and, the sort of court cases that had just come out on liability for mines and continuing to pump water, which is still something that's topical today. And, then sort of having been exposed to that course, that prospecting and mining law course, I decided I wanted to do a master's in environmental law. And the rest is history. So I hope that was a sufficient summary.
Yeah, sure. So in your case, there was a series of events. In your case, it was the particular cases that sort of sparked your interest, and then you realized that, this is where my passion really lies. Is that the case?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say it's not one particular event, but a series of different things that happened.
All right, interesting. Let's see, Mr. Davids. What is your origin story?
Thanks, Uben. I think I fall in that last category that you mentioned earlier. I basically stumbled upon it. I mean, to be honest, I always knew, even at school, I wanted to be an attorney. That I definitely knew. And as I got in varsity, I sort of, when we dealt with cases, I always had this idea of possibly being a litigant, but I never knew. I knew I was probably going to work for a general firm after studies and when I go into articles, but environmental law was never part of my plans. But I started in a firm in Worcester. I did my articles there, and just as I was finishing my articles, so at the beginning of my second year, my principal basically said to me, "Listen, at some point you need to specialize." That's sort of the idea of the firm, that each has his own practice or niche that he or she specializes in. And I mean, I went and I still didn't really know what I was going to do. And he actually put me on. At the time, we had a lot of clients in the agricultural sector and farmers, and here and there I got some exposure to NEMA. And he said to me, but why don't you do something in environmental law, even if it's just a short course or something? And I think I didn't apply, but I got information sheets from UCT, and then I got one from UWC. And it actually turned out at the time that the master's at UWC was more cost effective than the certificate to be done at UCT. And I said, listen, okay, it's fine. I'll do environmental law. At the time, I thought I was going to stay at that firm forever, and I thought, you know what, let me do environmental law. That's going to be my practice in this firm. And I started out, did it, but I mean, even during, I think it was only in my last year, my third year of studies, I actually went to my supervisor, Professor Werner Scholz. I went to go sit with him one day, and I said to him, Prof, listen, you know, it's all good and well, and it seems interesting what you're teaching us, but what can I actually do with this degree? What are my options? And it was only after speaking to him and actually doing some research as to what you exactly can do with the degree that it actually opened my eyes a bit and broadened my horizons. I then finished my LLM in Worcester at the firm. And then I actually, and this is how I ended up here, actually one day or a few days I sat on Google and I literally typed in environmental law firms in South Africa. And quite a few firms came up. But then HSG came up first. It was the first search item on Google. I clicked on it. Yeah. I went right down to the bottom where it gives you the email address where you need to send general inquiries to. I copied and pasted an email that I sent to various other job applications. I put it in like that with my annexes, and I think it's almost 4 years down the line. Yeah, I am.
First time lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was not the first time lucky. I applied to quite a few. I got rejected, but they gave me an opportunity, which I'm still very grateful for. But yeah.
Wow, interesting story. But you made that last part sound very simple. Then that's why I said first time lucky.
No, I'll show you the amount of emails I sent to random people that I don't really know to this day even.
Yeah. I mean that's the other challenge is in getting a job. We know the amount of applications that we have to send out, especially for like candidate attorney positions. That's a real challenge to most candidates. Next on our panel, I think he's having some connection problems, but let's see. Mr. Advocate Modise Shakung, are you back?
Yes, Kuben, I'm back. I'm struggling with my laptop, but I'm now using my mobile. I don't know if you can hear and see me.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. If you can activate your camera, then we'll all be happy because then we can see you.
Okay. Can you see me?
Nope.
Okay, fine. I'll sort that out along the way. In the interest of time, now that you can hear me. Good morning once again.
You've got a voice. You've got a voice for radio, so it's fine. we'll accept you the way you are. Your origin story, and then how did it start for you?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity, Kuben, and invitation. Good morning to my co-panelists, Fuad and Melissa, and all the colleagues online. Look, mine is also interesting. As Melissa and Fuad. I started my LLB at VETS in 2002, and in 2006 we were graduating. Then the university had no module in environmental law, but then as an alumni of the university, I kept in contact and followed their advertisements and new programs. Then around 2007, while I was busy saving my articles in the firm in Braamfontein, I also saw pamphlets on media and university websites that the faculty has now introduced a certificate in environmental law. Not knowing what to do after work and, focusing on my articles. I then took a chance and enrolled for the certificate. I loved the area of the law as it's been developing, and that's how I got introduced. Fast forward in 2010, I joined a mining company, Kalahari Manganese, which was then developing a greenfield manganese project in Hotazel in the Northern Cape. Hotazel will be 60 km out of Kuruman. The place is semi-desert. So when I joined, they were still clearing the bushes, developing the project. The mining company thinks of labor law, corporate governance, and so forth. I could easily, apply my mind and learn. Then I figure out what masters can I go and enroll. Environmental law was at the back of my mind. I made contact with the University of Pretoria. I like their program, being in Johannesburg, and the way UP was structured. Gave me a quotation, and the quotation was too expensive for me, and they wanted me to attend every Thursday night. I felt, oops, now this is taking me back to class. Every Thursday night I can't. And the fees are also too expensive.
Yeah.
Then I inquired more. The professors that side, they said, okay, fine, if you've got a problem with our program and the fees, try the University of Northwest at Potch campus. Went there to inquire, and I liked the program because I would attend the last Friday of the month, Friday night, and Saturday morning. So those were the only time that I would have to attend classes, and the fees were affordable. When they applied, and the rest is history. I enjoyed it, well recognized, met new people, got to be exposed to now environmental law in terms of the law, substance, and how it's applied, how it's developed, the plethora of the acts, guidelines, notices, and how they quickly change. Now, being in a mining company that is building a project, there's a lot of environmental impacts and issues that are happening. My research was the protection of procedural rights of indigenous people when mining takes place. Because now it was mining, it was / environmental, it was / communities. Fast forward, left the mine after 11 years. I'm now at a bar, and my practice comes from my research topic. I obtained that master's degree in 2004. Today, much of my practice is coming from communities affected by mining. That's how I got in contact, and that's how I love and practice environmental law today as the member of the bar. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Modise. Very interesting backstory there. So that obviously was your origin story, and what we'd like to move on next is the practice of environmental law. But before we go through to the next segment, guys, if there's any questions that you would like to pose to the panelists, like I said, please drop that in the chat or the Q&A, and then we'll get those. We'll get the panel to answer those questions for you. Okay, so thanks, guys, for sharing those fascinating insights into your beginning stories, your origin stories. But now let's talk about the reality of a day-to-day practice. What does a typical day in your role look like? And I mean, what types of clients or what types of issues do you generally deal with as an environmental lawyer? And maybe, also give us some insight as how do you deal with the emotional side of work? I mean, from your origin stories, it shows that there's a certain amount of passion that you have for this field of environmental law. Otherwise, you won't be doing it. So how do you deal with the emotional side of the work, where sometimes the outcomes of a particular matter may not go in favor of the environment? I mean, I know I've had those bad days, but maybe you've gone through that. So Mr. Davids, perhaps you can kick off on this topic, in terms of your typical day.
Thanks, Ben. So, I mean, I should probably just say I specialize in environmental law, but that's probably about, say, 80% of my practice, or 70. The rest of it is still general work, some commercial work. So typical day, there would always be something in the background. There would either be an opinion that I'm busy writing, litigation that's maybe ongoing, or a compliance-related matter that I'm dealing with in environmental law. But I mean, a typical day normally starts quite early. I get to the office, I think I need at least 2 cups of coffee to get going.
Oh, another coffee addict. X.
And then I normally see what I have planned for that day. As you know, I mean, you normally have juniors that you have to manage as well. So you have to check in with the juniors in the office to see that they have enough work, to advise them on certain matters. I teach a bit as well. We have CAs at our offices that we have to teach as well. There's normally some admin that has to be done. And then you really get into the meat of it. Like I said, it really just depends what's planned for that day. Generally, our firm, most of our work is property related. So I work a lot with developers. I also work with commercial clients as well. And just people that saw that individuals maybe that saw us on a website or that saw us on LinkedIn, but most of the work is property. Generally, it's property related. So most of the work that I do on a daily basis is focused on that. It would either be assisting one of my colleagues on a certain project where they need some environmental input, for instance, or just a client that needs general environmental advice, or a project. We have an in-house environmental consultant as well. So I normally assist her with the legal side of a project as well. So that's normally a typical day, what a typical day looks like for me and the types of clients that I deal with.
So you're not wearing your cape and your superhero costume every day. It's no. Because you still have to sit in the office and do the typing and the normal sort of lawyer type of work. It's just now and again that you really get to save the planet. In other words, getting immersed in the environmental law sort of matters.
Yeah, 100%. I think what I didn't mention there, I mean, as an environmental lawyer, you sometimes go to a site as well. That's one of the nice things of the job, and I mean, we'll get there. Yeah. But a typical day normally would be that as well. Maybe go to a site with an EAP or with a specialist or with a client, maybe for an hour or so. It all depends. I mean, how far it is. That might take you entire day as well. So that's normally what I do. At least in a normal day.
Okay, Melissa. So Fuad obviously gets his boots dirty. I hope you don't wear high heels to site visits as part of your practice, like some people that I know.
No, I generally don't wear high heels, and most definitely put on the steel points for all the site visits and the hard hats. And it's always very interesting, when to spot the non-enviro or health and safety or public lawyers is when you get to a site and they're donning a suit and their Sunday best.
Yeah. So a typical day would.
Sorry, I think Modise, you have some feedback there. I think it's maybe because there are 2 machines running.
When you get to a
maybe I'll just mute him for a while.
Okay.
And then.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, Melissa, you can continue about your day-to-day.
Were you able to mute Modise there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a typical day. Sure, it's so difficult because every day is different and it always holds a new challenge. or different challenges or something unprepared. I'm sure the same with Fuad, but fairly similar to his practice as well. You know, not just environmental law, but quite a bit of commercial and corporate work. Because, you know, you have to do the work that also pays bills. So I do have a bit of a mixed practice in that respect. But yeah, anything from, you know, team meetings, checking emails, fielding new queries, doing a bit of admin, you know, similar to what Fuad was saying, but then, you know, also finding the time and, you know, the legal analysis and the putting your head down for a couple of hours, finding hours, setting aside hours for deep work, you know, is important, you know, analyzing agreements, analyzing the law, especially in doing opinion work. It's not just, you know, the answers don't jump at you from the regulations. They require deep analysis, lots of case law reading, and yeah, keeping up to date. Like, you know, it's probably a bad habit, but in the morning when I have my first cup of coffee, I generally sort of check LinkedIn, you know, and follow wonderful people like you, Kuben, who put out nice articles and you know, it's very useful to sort of be on a platform where you can see legal updates. So my feed is such that I see sort of, even before getting to the office and checking Sabinet for what's the latest, you know, you do sort of get a sense because people publish, you know, in line with their involvement and their interests. So it's extremely important to keep up to speed with, you know, legislative change in that way. So also just like following and reviewing newsletters and things like that is also quite important to stay abreast. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what Fuad said, but you know, very much similar to what he was saying. But yeah, so a range of opinion work, commercial agreements, disputes, compliance and enforcement type work as well. But yeah, I think I've covered all the bullets under that question.
So Fuad, on one end, runs a practice. So he practices, he obviously gets involved in litigation, represents clients. Is that the same thing that you do, or you are predominantly a legal consulting? Because obviously there's a difference between that.
So I consult, but I'm on the practicing role, and I consult predominantly for Warburton's, which is a law firm which sort of runs that similar practice, like HSG, where Fuad is. So I assist with those level of projects. And then on the consulting side, where I help other clients, it's sort of more agreements specific type of matters, not necessarily litigious. It's more sort of advisory type work.
Because what I'm trying to get through to our audience is basically there's so many facets to the practice of law, and then in our case, the practice of environmental law. So not everybody has to don the robe and appear in court and fight cases, as it were. There's so many other facets. There's legal consulting and litigation being one of them. Modise,
yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry, just before you get to Modise, and I'm so glad to see his face again. Managed to fix the technical issues. But as Modise was also saying with his background, you know, I've also been in-house. I've also, for my sins, done a stint at the NPA, although very briefly.
Right.
So it is, yeah, the practice of law is not just within a law firm. You know, it is sort of going and seeking where the opportunities are and carving out a niche for yourself and sort of sometimes creating those opportunities.
And it all forms part of your bag of experience, if you want to put it, you know, working either in-house, consulting, litigating. It all helps you grow as a practitioner. Now, Modise, on the other hand, is in a different category, well, in a similar category as me. Now, you're practicing as an advocate, and obviously your day-to-day practice is somewhat different.
Yes, Kuben, it's quite different. If I can link it with my background, which I explained earlier on. While I was at the mines as in-house legal counsel, I'll have a pair of PPE and boots at the boot of my car, and also in my office. Because at the mines, you call in underground if there's a fatality or a serious injury. We're also doing standby. So once a week, once a month, Monday to Monday, I'll be on standby where I don't leave town. Having transited to the bar, I'm still establishing my practice at the bar, and I do quite a variety of work. But with regards to mining and environmental matters that I do, being a member of the bar, I'll get a brief. And having acted for these NGOs or lobby groups or communities, by word of mouth, I get also roped in now and again in matters affected by mining or environmental issues. So I still travel the breadth and width of our country. So I would still keep my PPE, which I took over from the mine. Sometimes you wear boots, so issues are not always going to court. If you were to consult, there's a lot of site inspection. I've been involved in fatal inquiries here at the bar. You still want to go to site for the local inspection, understand how the accident happened.
Here's one question from Mr. Shahab Khan Malik. And he wants to know, how do environmental laws and policies intersect with human rights, particularly in the context of climate change? So Mr. Malik is hitting us with a theoretical question here. Anybody want to take a dive at that? Or we can come back to it if you want.
I suppose that it's always where to start because it's such a loaded question. I mean, it directly intersects with human rights. You know, Section 24, not just the right to an environment that's not harmful to health or well-being, but other constitutional rights as well. You know, property, water. It directly intersects. In the context of climate change, I mean, so I don't know who else wants to contribute, but like, you know, all of these discussions in the ICJ advisory opinion, you know, I mean, it's clear that changes in the climate affect people, and then in turn it affects these rights. And I suppose, you know, all the discussions are around, well, where does the responsibility lie? How do we mitigate? How do we adapt? How do we hold? Who do we hold responsible? How do we hold them responsible? And you know, those are just further questions that stem from that question.
Yeah, I don't think Mr. Malik realized that he just now opened a Pandora's box with that one loaded question. But thanks, Mr. Malik. Fuad, do you want to take do you want to attempt to answer that?
I wanted to say actually there's actually a few like practical examples of that. I mean, if we just think about the Nicobene, I saw you did a post about it the other day about that action the same man. I mean, if you take that one a step back, say like the floods that happened, the damage that caused to the infrastructure that's not repaired yet, the raw sewage that's basically ran into the sea. I mean, how many lives has that affected, especially in the beginning when people weren't aware of it? So it definitely intersects, and there's like I said, practical examples of it. I mean, from a policy and legislative perspective, like Melissa said, I mean, there's various. I mean, you can mention NEMA, you can mention the Water Act. There's so many that you can actually take some time to just talk about that question. It's quite loaded, but yeah, it definitely intersects, and there are various examples of it.
Yeah, I think that intersection is both direct and indirect, like you've just unpacked. Thanks, guys. Hopefully Modise sorts his connections issues out, because what I'd like to move on to is now a very important segment of our discussion. Oh, wait, hang on. We're getting some other questions coming in. Aha. Okay, so Misa Matam, she says, good morning. I hear most panelists did their law degrees as part of your undergrad law degrees, and then you specialized from there. How would one go about moving from a natural science degree to specializing in environmental law? That is, from an MSc environmental science. Thanks.
That one's for you, Kuben.
Yeah, I wanted to say that you can answer that one actually.
Yeah, Kumisa. So yeah, so I made that transition. So my undergrad degree was a Bachelor of Science, and then I did a Bachelor of Science honors in zoology. But then I was thrown into the the public sector, where I was exposed to, at that stage, was 1998. That was when our EIA regulations came about. So that was slap bang in the middle of environmental law, and that's how I got my work experience. So, and then over the decades, I made the transition, and then studied through UNISA, did a law degree, and then got admitted and started practicing. So it's not impossible. It can be done. It's actually the background that you have in science, and combined with your law degree is that's enough ammunition to start another world war, so to speak, in a good way. So yes, it's entirely possible, and you can do it. The other question we have is from Sizakele Zungu, and what advice would you have for someone who is fully employed and studying law part-time with regards to doing articles when the time comes without giving up the financial stability of employment? Whoa. While transitioning to a career in environmental law. So this is a very important question and something that I also grappled with, but obviously my history is a little bit more sad. But what advice would you guys give to those who are now full-time employed, starting part-time, but then there's going to come a time when they need to do their articles and might have to decide whether to give up that full-time employment and take the risk and then go and do your articles? Modise, let's...
Yeah, look, my advice is that you need to have your own career plan, jot it down, and make sacrifices. With me, I had to leave the comfort of my home and stay at the mines. I know of colleagues when we graduated, they went to start working without articles. Over the years, they earned a decent salary. They had to quit work and go to smallest firms for articles, right? Now, with your work experience, you would stand out. Try to get firms where what you were doing would also assist in shaping your career so that you build a niche. So sacrifice, even if it's to the smallest firms. I had colleagues in a mining company who had law degrees. They left those comfort also to the small firms, right? In small towns, just to get articles. And from there on, with your admission, you can fly higher. It's a sacrifice of 2 years. And to those who also did the PLT, could be 1 year. So the anchor of it is sacrifice for your career path. If you leave it longer, it's going to be more difficult. You get into a family setup. Things are getting expensive. You get comfort with the money you're earning. So bite the bullet, sacrifice, go for your articles. You can always come back as an admitted attorney or as an advocate. You can fly higher from there. Sure. Thanks.
Wow. So that obviously is advice based on experience. And Tizakele, that's something that's good advice that you need to take. Mr. Davids, your take on this?
No, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I actually just wanted to say, the first question really, and it's probably difficult for someone that's not practicing law, hasn't been exposed to it. Do you want to be in practice as an attorney? Because if that's the case, then I agree with what Advocate Modise is saying. You'd have to bite the bullet and do that 2 years of articles. There's no getting past that. But we've seen a lot in practice these days. There's a lot of consultants that transitions from science to law, where they don't do articles. They get their LLB degree done. They say have 5 to 10 years experience as a EAP or as a specialist consultant, and what they do is they work as independent legal environmental specialists or consultants to various projects. Especially if they're quite known in the industry, people are more likely to trust them with these projects without them being an admitted attorney. So that's sort of my advice and what you would need to decide in the beginning.
Melissa?
Not much to add, and my colleagues have covered most of it. But I did PLT full-time in the evenings when I was doing my articles, so I was able to reduce the duration of articles. So I would say, like, if as Fuad and Modise have said, that is, you see yourself in legal practice and you see articles as the route, perhaps doing PLTs while you are still gainfully or financially lucratively employed, finishing that PLT. I'm assuming that is still an option. I mean, I've lost track with the requirements of the CAs at the moment, but I think that is still possible to reduce your articles if you've done the full PLTs, but one might just have to check those requirements. I'm not sure going to the bar, I mean, Kuben, you and Modise might be able to say, but that's also a year, right? It depends also where you go. Can't you also do a different type of program through like the general counsel of the bar, where you're not necessarily full-time at the bar? I seem to recall there was also that option. So I suppose it's also just doing your homework about what the options are, if it is that you want to practice either as an advocate or an attorney, because the alternative is going in-house.
Yeah. So I think, as Fuad and Melissa was saying, is it just depends where you want to go. So to practice, obviously, you have to do articles and then get admitted, but that's not the only sort of option available. You can still, I'm sure, still give out. You can still do legal consulting without having being admitted. Correct? Yeah.
Yes.
But you would be,
yes.
you would be restricted in terms of what you can do, because it's only practicing.
Yes.
Practicing legal practitioners who practice that can do certain things, run trust accounts, appear in court, those types of things. So one does have to be very careful. So it is about identifying where you see yourself, but then also understanding the rules, the laws, the Legal Practice Council rules, and the rules under the LPA, and where you operate within those frameworks.
So I think it would be a safer bet to run the gauntlet and go and get it, serve your articles or do pupillage or whatever it takes to get admitted, and then you can decide. So you have a fallback. You can either go only into consulting, or you can work as an in-house counsel, or work for another law firm, or even run your own practice. So that I think admission obviously opens the door to a whole sort of scenario of options. Modise, I'm sure you have you changed your tie and your because I'm sure it's a different outfit before earlier this morning. Anyway.
No, I'm only changing devices. The tie is still the way it started.
Oh, the color. Oh, maybe so maybe the color. Okay, so one of your fans here has posted a question. Hi, Advocate Shakung. I just went through your LinkedIn profile. So somebody's already stalking you, huh? And noted that you did a compliance management course. And sorry, this question comes from Motolo. And I've decided to do the same to advance into ESG. May you please advise me on how to properly position myself for legal and compliance roles with a view to specializing in ESG?
Oh, that's a good one. Look, I was sent to UJ to study a diploma in compliance management by the mine I was working for. That was SASO. Because in that setup, compliance was my client. So the guys that were doing compliance in the plants and at the mines will consult with me. So to close that gap, I was also taken to school so that I can sharpen my skills and know what I'm doing. In some companies, compliance and legal are combined. You become now the referee and the player, which is not best practice. So hence, where I'm coming from, we were separated. Now, yes, you want to go and get your compliance, but also get the practical exposure. So you can transit from legal to compliance or compliance from legal. Now, also it depends in the company and the industry. I know in the banks, they'll do it differently. Where I'm coming from, they will do it differently. But once you are armed with that compliance and you are in a mining space and now talking ESG, you see now, that's where now your qualification will help you and the work environment. What will differ from company to company is where in legal and compliance are combined, or where legal and compliance are separated, which I advocate that you separate the two. Depending on the company, first things for you, now you're saying you want to do ESG, get that compliance, and you will move on. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Modise. So we'll deal with Kara, Alicia or Alicia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And then Ernest. I think Lutendo, you're just giving us a comment there, but let's deal with those three questions and then we'll continue with our panel discussion. And then hopefully when you come back, then there'll be more questions for us. So Cara Stokes, does anyone know why UP closed down the Laws of South Africa website? I think I know why. How does the general public and environmental specialists stay abreast of the fast-changing laws and regulations without having to have a Sabinet subscription? So, Cara, I think the alternative to Laws of South Africa would be the Law Library, or is it lawlibrary.co.za? I'm not sure, but there's another one that you can get access to regulations and updated statutes. Guys from the panel, can you correct me on that? I think it's called Law Library. Or should I Google it?
Yes, I think so, Wayne.
Yeah, so just Google that, Kara, and I think because we all at some stage in our lives relied on Laws of South Africa. But I think there's one now called the Law Library.
Yes, it's called Law Library. But what I can say on that point is that we need to invest in our tools of trade. The platforms are quite similar. It's the one that you get used to. And I don't want to mention their names here, but choose the one that can work for you, invest, and you'll see that it will make your life easier. With this artificial intelligence, things are so easy that if you come to our chambers, we've got few books now. Everything's online. It's on my laptop. I'm in court or I'm in my site inspections. I can quickly go onto my laptop and access whatever I want. So invest in that tool of trade. They are quite many in the market, but they are similar. Get the one that can work for you. Thank you.
That's an interesting take. Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
Melissa.
Sorry, it is concerning to me though that we have to invest in these things in the context of South Africa, because some of the other jurisdictions that I follow or have done research in, the government maintains their website with all of the laws, and everyone can access it at any point in time, and it's updated. So, you know, the problem, I mean, I've not actually used Law Library. I always just use the various subscription-based databases, you know, because it's critical to have accurate information. And sometimes even because in environmental laws, the amendment laws have transitional provisions, and this provision starts at this date and that provision starts at that date. Sometimes you have to dissect those original gazettes to even see that these databases have captured it accurately, and it has happened that they haven't. So, you know, I'm not sure how reliable some of the non-paying ones are, but it is to me a fundamental problem or concern. So I share Cara's concern that we should be paying for that. Like these gazettes, as they come out by the government publisher, should find its way onto one consolidated law database. So yeah, I don't know. That was just sort of my additional comment. But yes, I agree with Modise. Like there's no way, you know, in order to be able to have the reliable, hot off the press latest gazettes and make sure that you have the latest, you know, the subscription is the way to go.
What?
I totally agree. It's unfortunate, but I mean, we have to invest in these things to make sure you keep up with the latest. I mean, the one thing you don't want to do is write a letter or stand in court and reference something that's not there anymore. So it's unfortunate, but I agree. I mean, we have to invest in these tools of your trade.
Well, I have to disagree with my panel because I think it just depends on the stage of your practice. And this has been a commonly raised issue with most legal practitioners. And those like me who started practice straight on their own, or the solo practice, with no clients, no bank balance, investment, how do you start off? And not having an office, not having resources is no reason in this day and age to not be able to practice. You still can. So, you know, from a bare bones sort of perspective, you can practice and you can make use of the open source, if you want to call it, databases. Now, Law Library is an initiative of the University of Cape Town, and the Open Law Africa, as well as the Judicial Institute for Africa. It's a combined effort, and you'll get all the laws updated. Obviously, it will indicate on the specific legislation that you pull up what is the date that this legislation has been uploaded on the database. So these are some of the open access databases that you can. Insofar as case law is concerned, there's SAFLI, and SAFLI is an initiative of the Legal Practice Council, as well as I think another university that gives you case law as well as some legislation. And then in addition to that, once you become admitted, you are by law compelled to register with the LPC, which is the Legal Practice Council. And as part of your membership of the council, you have access to the law library. There's a certain process that you follow. I think you email your queries through, and then they will assist you in trying to trace maybe the relevant legislation or the relevant case law. So that's insofar as starting off your practice where you do not have the resources. And many people on LinkedIn have been complaining, oh, I don't have the funds to start a practice. And my approach has always been, that is an excuse in this day and age to start a practice. I mean, I started my practice from my bedroom. I did consults through Teams. And where necessary, I either travel to the client's premises, or I rented out a boardroom if the need arises. So in this day and age, there's no excuse. Do not feel compelled. But once you have a steady stream of clients and you have the cash flows, you should, like my panel have indicated, then start investing in these databases. And that can only build your practice and make it more stable and reliable. But if you're starting off, it's a case of phone a friend, ask for favors. But like the panel have mentioned, always remember is the legitimacy of the source of your information. So the ones that I've mentioned are legitimate organizations and databases, and those should be the only, as legal practitioners, those should be the only sources that you should be using. So Kara, you also opened a Pandora's box here, right? But I hope we've answered your question. So Alicia Evertson says she's practicing in the Northern Cape as an attorney. She's done environmental law as an elective at the at your alma mater, which is Fuad, the Western Cape. But she never had an exposure to environmental law. Now that she started her own practice, it's been 6 years' time. She wishes to carve out a niche, and she just wants to have some guidance to start. So how does I'm assuming, Alicia, you started a general practice, but now you want to sort of transition into environmental law and sort of carve out a niche for yourself. And yeah, she just wants some advice on how she does that.
If
I think it's important.
there.
So
yeah, you
yes.
can carry on with Modise, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. I think my advice is find someone that you can shadow. You can follow. Just reach out. My details are also there, or any of my panelists, or anyone over the webinar here. Shadow someone, you follow them, and that is the cheapest way of being exposed. If you're in the Northern Cape, and that's what we are doing here. I'm only 4 years at the bar and 5 years with People Age. I still go to court and look at the court rolls. And I see interesting matters, and I go to that courtroom and sit and listen. As the advocates or attorneys are engaging with the court, then I reach out to them, we exchange details. The other thing is pro bono matters. So when we start our practices, because we want to build a niche, we need to go out for it, get to the people, and be prepared to do it for free. So if you've got now the qualification and you've got your practice going, now follow the work where it is. And with all the luck and hard work, the work now will follow you. Thank you.
Sure, Fuad.
Yeah, no, I mean, he gave the advice that it's basically what I wanted to say. Connect with people that's doing similar things. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like you said, I mean, go shadow this person. Ask the questions that you want to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because I mean, if you don't do that, you won't get anywhere. We all have to begin somewhere.
I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I mean, the four of us, at one stage, we were total strangers. I mean, we could have bumped into each other in court or some event and we wouldn't have known each other. But we took advantage of, like I'm saying now, this day and age with social media and what have you. We reached out to each other and connected. I mean, Fuad and myself obviously have the added benefit in that we are based here in KZN, and we've interacted on legal matters face to face. But that doesn't stop you from interacting. I mean, Alicia, now that you know the five of us are alive, you feel free. I mean, I'm talking for myself and Modise, I don't know about the others, but you can reach out to us and ask whatever questions. I mean, that's what we did in getting this webinar up. So gone are the days when we feel shy and what have you. I mean, just put yourself out there. That's the only way to get anywhere now.
I'd add one thing, which actually applies to Kara's question and Alicia's question. Join the Environmental Law Association. They also send out weekly newsletters with all the legal updates. And I think that also gives you a sense, of forming part of that environmental law community. They hold annual conferences, and that's also another avenue of meeting people who have an interest in that space.
Yeah, and I think Melissa, what you touched on is networking. I mean, we all have touched on it, but we didn't say it. It's networking. And it can be done similarly to the whole argument that we've had on subscription services. You can either pay for networking, or you can do it free of charge. So, but the thing is, getting yourself out there, interacting with people, showing who you are, what you're capable of, meeting other people, knowing more about them, learning from them. And in that way, you can transition, if you want, into that environmental law niche comfortably. And look, the other option is just doing it. Just do it and learn the hard way. Make mistakes. I'm sure my panel will back me up on this. Is that the most important things you learn are by making mistakes. I continuously make a lot of mistakes, which means I'm continuously learning. So I think for now, let's, seeing that we've exhausted our questions, is to move on to the third segment, which is the pros and cons. So this is where, at the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned we are not here to tell you, to give you a sweetheart story of the profession, of the legal profession or environmental law profession. So in this segment, we want to touch on the fact that every profession has its ups and downs. But what the panel is going to tell us is what has been their experience, what are the best parts of practicing as an environmental lawyer, as well as what are some of the biggest challenges that you experience as an environmental lawyer. Melissa?
Let me just unmute. Sure. That's also a loaded one.
Well, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Tell us.
Yeah, I'm trying to distill it in a shorter version as possible. The good is, I suppose, when you see progress, when you see knowledge sharing, when people's understanding of environmental impacts and mitigation progress in a way that gives effect to the principles of sustainable development. So it's always that balancing act, which sometimes doesn't have the ideal outcome, which is the bad. Sometimes it does veer, in favor of the big corporate bulldozing the little guy, which is the bad and the ugly of what it is that we do. And yeah, but I suppose the best parts are getting at least some resolve for a client, whether or not it is an affected person or someone who's trying to comply, and assisting them in that sort of compliance journey. Yeah, biggest challenges, I think, navigating the laws, navigating interpretation of the laws, trying to convince other people of your interpretation, considering the risk of going to court. It's always 50-50. The struggle is trying to convince judges to see your point, but because environmental matters are quite complex, it's always that risk of it could go either way. And an easier procedural point is decided on instead of engaging with all the changing regulations over time. I think was there another point that I hadn't addressed?
Well, we just wanted to know, the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of the, it's not all a bed of roses, so to speak. And I'm sure Fuad will back me up on that. You're looking confused, Fuad?
Yeah. No. I was just switching on my mic. Sorry. No, 100%. I agree there, and I agree with what Melissa said, and to add on there from a personal level also. You get to do what you love doing. You get to specialize in a field that you're passionate about, that you like, that's interesting for you. And I don't think a lot of practitioners get to say that or get to do that. Then I think from a challenge perspective, first thing, it's really not the first thing, but just what I thought of, it's long hours. It's you might be in the field for the entire day, but then you have to remember, like we said earlier, that's not all you do. You have to manage a practice. There's other things that's ongoing. Then you have to still catch up to that. But I think in general, once you get to a stage where you can specialize in something, and that's most of your day that you're doing, it's incredibly rewarding. It's a lot of hard work, but it's definitely incredibly rewarding. One thing that I like about being an environmental lawyer, like I said, I love going to site. I mean, I can be at a site for the entire day. I like interacting with the other specialists, and especially in this field, you're always going to learn something. We might get a project tomorrow where I don't have the most experience, where say the specialist that we interact with, he or she might be the one that I go to, for instance, to gain some more knowledge on a certain subject matter. So that's also one of the pros of it. It's very interesting, and you learn each and every day.
So be honest, Fuad. You are tasked with doing an environmental audit for a golf course. You go there. What happens there really? Do you end up playing?
I'm playing. I'll be honest. I'm playing golf. 100%.
Thanks for your honesty, Modise. Are you that honest?
And presumably you don't need your PPE for that site visit.
Yeah, look, I agree with what Melissa and Fuad have already said. Starting with the pros, I've noticed that our communities, be it rural or urban, they are increasingly becoming aware of their environmental rights. When we get a call and we go to those sites, the people already know what they want and how it should be done, because they do read. And with some cases that we have had in the past, the law is becoming settled. So people are becoming aware of their rights, and that makes our job more easier. Another pro is I'm given an opportunity to travel to different parts of the country, and I've gone beyond some countries here, neighboring countries, on environmental matters. So I love that. It takes me away from office, and I know that I'm not going to be roped or, wearing my suits. I go with my jeans, boots, and I'm an ordinary person. The con is because of my work is still coming from the communities. You get warned up front that, Chief, the community wants your services, but they don't have money to pay, right? And when you get to the other side, my opponents would be maybe a developer or a mining company or a big corporate. They'll bring the entourage of senior counsels that I know they're going to coin it. And here I am on the other side looking poor, but the fulfillment of now having protected their rights and having justice being served, that fulfills me. So I know much as I need the money and I wish I can be on the other side, but I'm called to be on this side and it fulfills me. So those are my pros and cons. On a later note, I had an encounter where a client tells me that a senior attorney has said to the people I used to work with, don't brave Modise because Modise is acting for the communities. So it's the thing that we also come across. Once you get aligned with a certain path, which at the bar, I'm free to act for anyone. So now you get labeled as a community lawyer. While I'm waiting for a brief from a big corporate, now people are already saying, junior as I am, this guy's acting for the communities. Don't brief him for the corporates. So those are the things that you come across in reality of life. But if you are called for the other side, they all have a right to access the courts and be having their rights protected. So we should not be worried of who we represent in the room, is to see justice being served, and we fight for that. Yeah.
I guess like with any other occupation, this legal fraternity is also full of gossip and bullying and intimidation as well. But that's something that we just need to move past. It's really unfortunate to have to be labeled as such. So the last segment, obviously, is I wanted to touch on is in what advice can you give someone who wants to enter the field? But I see the large majority of our questions are actually falling into this category. So maybe we should go through the questions and then just before we do that, Sue George also says, in so far as networking is concerned, the IAIASA, so the International Association for Impact Assessment, South Africa, is also one of the best networking platforms. Well, she says, is the best networking platform you will ever find. Become a member today. So that's an advert, Sue. I'll have to charge you. Yeah, but IISA is one option for you to join. Obviously, IASA is made up of basically environmental assessment practitioners and a wide scope. You guys from corporate, guys from environmental consulting firms, government, industry, law. And then, obviously, back in the days, there was also Environmental Law Association was sort of a chapter, but I think it's on its own now. So there's Environmental Law Association, IISA. There's the Bar Councils. There's also the LSSA, Law Society of South Africa. So these are all your networking opportunities. So my good friend, Mr. Puvi Mudli, your friend as well, Fuad. So
yeah,
Puvi says,
I was his principal.
Huh?
I was his principal, actually.
Okay. Puvi, you don't want to give us the lowdown on Fuad's whether he was a good or bad principal? So Puvi says, hi panelists, what are your views on the assumption that environmental lawyers have a pro-conservation bias? It's similar to what Modise has been raising, is like this labeling, if you want to call it. So what are your views on the assumption that environmental lawyers have a pro-conservation bias? And if not, how do you deal with non-complying clients? Although you may achieve the best outcome for the client, it may not be environmentally sustainable. If you enter the environmental law field out of passion for the environment, do you turn away wrongdoers as clients? Well, this is something that we had a discussion before we started the webinar. So this is sort of a slightly different take on that, but it falls under the same sort of principle. How do you deal with that, Modise?
Look, my view is you need to do your best, and we are educated and trained, to stand for the truth. What the client does after advice is at their own risk. I have comfort of advising clients on the right thing to do could be from existing case law of legislation. The client will now have to decide on what they do. I would not advise client to sweep all the debt under the carpet, because I know, especially on the environmental space, that will come with far more greater consequences. It could be a company that's going to be fined, or management, and there could be prosecution. Now, if it comes my way, I also can be disciplined. I can lose my right of appearance if it comes out that this is the guy who actually advised us to sweep all the debt under the carpet. So, yeah, I would not advise to run it away. But also, we are coming from the period where economic development will take the front seat and environmental protection and compliance will be at the back seat, or it's not part of the considerations. So where we are, we need to balance. It must be environmentally friendly. It must be economically sustainable. And yeah, so those are the three pillars of our environmental compliance or development. Our advice is do it the right way, sustainable. And if you look at environmental compliance as well, in instance where you're not able to take it out, minimize it, and manage it. You may not be able to reduce all or eliminate all the environmental factors or impacts, but the aim is to minimize and manage, not sweep them away or ignore them. That will be my answer to it.
Melissa, have you had a similar experience where people have sort of tarred and feathered you and labeled you as a greenie lawyer, and then you've had some issues with representing the bad guys?
Yeah, it is. It's weird, and I don't like this labeling. It's either you're the greenie or you're acting for big bag corporate. So it's like it's sort of two diametrically opposed labels, and it's not true. It's just, we are here because we have a passion for the environment and environmental law and sustainable development. We all use electricity. We drive cars that use fuel. Like, we have to be realistic, but it has to be sustainable. So I would say, in Kubi's question, the best outcome for the client, I would say, in the long term, the best outcome for the client would go hand in hand with an environmentally sustainable solution. I don't think they're at opposite ends. I have very strong feelings and a pet peeve for lawyers who flout the uncertainties of the environmental laws and, try and exploit those uncertainties and the gaps. And I don't condone that behavior whatsoever. I think it's unethical, and I don't think it accords with our duties as officers of the court. As Modise said, it's about the facts, it's about the truth, but it is about the client getting representation. So it is about fair representation to the client within the bounds of our ethical responsibilities and our professional duties. But as Modise said, we advise them to do the right things and we help them and guide them. It is, difficult space. The laws change, the requirements have changed over time. They have become more strict. There's a lot of movement. It's difficult as environmental lawyers to stay completely up to speed with every environmental sector. So to expect the regulated community to do that isn't always a fair ask. So that is our role. Our role is to help and advise and ensure there's compliance and sustainable development.
So Fuad, it all boils down to this whole concept of good and evil. And I don't fall for that Hollywood concept of the good sit on this side and the evil sit on that side. And I think every individual has a little bit of both in them. And I think if one comes to that understanding, maybe we'll understand our role as legal practitioners. Is that your take as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think also just that last part. Do you turn away wrongdoers as clients? You can decide who you want to represent. If you want to represent someone that you know did wrong, it's totally up to you. I think it's important that we just keep in mind, our ethical obligation and that we don't break the law. I think we also need to just mention and remember that the presumption of innocence. It's innocent until proven guilty. It still has to be proven that person did something wrong. So it's easy to say, or to assume that person is a wrongdoer. It's important that we listen as well, and then advise based on what we were instructed. Well, that's sort of my take on it. I'm surprised who is asking the question. We've had that discussion quite a few times last year during his candidacy. Maybe he's testing to see if my view changed or something.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you can't accept all clients. I mean, sometimes
100%.
there's red flags, but it may not be the reason what we think it is. It could be other reasons. I know from my perspective, in the beginning, I would, take any client because I was desperate to generate fees. But I think I've grown up now. And sometimes you can see the red flags. You can see this is not a type of client that I want to take on. And one red flag is when you find out there's been maybe 3 or 4, or maybe even more practitioners that this client has gone through. So this client is obviously shopping. And it won't be too long before you are one of the past legal practitioners that represented this person. So sometimes, you're going to have to be a little bit, not a little bit, you have to be circumspect when you are taking on clients. But what we are saying is purely from the substance of the matter. We shouldn't just reject a client because we think they are guilty or we think they are the wrongdoers and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, our ethical obligation is also, like cab rank rule, everyone is entitled to justice and fair representation, and we can't just show away clients just because we feel conflicted or for some reason. There has to be a really good sort of legitimate, I don't have capacity, or it's not my area, but everyone is entitled to have access to justice and fair representation.
Yeah. So Niels Bezuidenhout, his question goes as follows. Good day to all the panelists. Thank you for offering up the time to give us insight into environmental law. I work as a senior environmental manager for a construction company. I have an MPhil in environmental management and 14 years experience, of which 5 years was as an EP. Okay, Niels, you got the job now. Due to the almost daily requirements of having to interpret environmental law, especially when we receive non-conformances from clients or ECOs, or directives from departments, I have been considering taking the leap and doing an LLB so that one interpretation of law has more substance. My question is, with an LLB, will my interpretations as an in-house advisor hold more substance? Niels, I think you answered your question, but let's put it to the panel. So Niels, what basically wants to know is, he obviously comes face to face with non-compliances, maybe his client or maybe his team, and he wants to know, will having an LLB next to my name make me hold more substance or give me more ammunition to convince the client to do the right thing? Modise? You worked as in-house counsel, but obviously, if you didn't have an LLB, would the client listen to you, or was it because you had the LLB and were legal counsel? So Niels wants to know: would he have would people listen to him and take him more seriously if he had an LLB? You muted.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
My experience is that if it's legal and you're sitting as an in-house counsel, feel free to express your legal opinion. Then where I came across, and it happened many times, where it's now scientific, I had in-house scientists closer to me, and they will express their opinion on the scientific subject matter. Where we are not comfortable, myself as legal and my colleague who's now scientific, we go and seek an independent legal opinion or scientific opinion, right? Now we bring our external to really test our view. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you are strong on the science of it, feel free as in-house to express your opinion. If you are legal in-house and you feel confident about your legal opinion, express it. But where you are not comfortable, feel free to go for an external opinion or scientific opinion. That's my view. Thank you.
Fuad, have you been in a similar situation? Well, Niels's approach is different, but he's basically asking, will an LLB give me more? Will I be able to convince people more? But do you have the same take as Modise? Or
Yeah, and it also depends on which type of clients you work with. Maybe it's a client that wants to see, when they take legal advice, they want to see, you know, you have an LLB, you have a certain amount of experience. But I mean, just reading from what he's done so far, he should have very good knowledge of, say, NEMA, especially the regulation and how it works. So yes, LLB will probably add substance to his profile, but I think he shouldn't be afraid to advise if he already has an opinion. I think dealing with or having that many years of experience in environmental management and especially compliance and enforcement, he's probably dealt with a lot of administrative notices from the departments. Yes, probably it's going to be a big leap for him when it comes to court work or whether it becomes litigious. But I think from an advisory perspective, you should maybe go and sit and look at what you've achieved so far and what you've learned, because I think within those 14 years and especially working with NEMA, he's probably gained quite a lot. So again, the LLB will probably broaden his horizons more. Just with regards to the skill of interpretation, it will definitely help. But also to add that 14 years of experience will definitely also add more substance to his profile.
Melissa?
I tend to agree a little bit more with Modise on this one. Wearing a environmental practitioner hat, and as Fuad said, with all of that experience, is a particular hat. Wearing a legal advisor hat is a different hat. And comes with different risk and liability. If you are giving legal opinions, your professional indemnity is not going to cover you if you're an environmental manager. So be very careful. Legal interpretation principles that you learn as part of an LLB, and not just as part of an LLB, you get exposure to the very basics. I'll turn this onto you. If you did a BSc, you won't expect someone who's just come out of varsity, who's done a BSc, to have your level of experience in the field. It's the same with legal practice. Understanding administrative law principles, statutory interpretation principles is not just something you pick up from a semester of doing law of interpretation or admin law. It comes with the LLB, the articles, or having done pupillage and the practice of that. So although you have, as Fuad has rightly said, you have a significant knowledge of NEMA and the environmental aspects of it. In our daily practice, we see where EAPs advise clients do a 24G, and when we dissect the law and interpret it based on the time that the activities were undertaken, we're like, no, you should always seek a legal opinion with someone with sufficient professional indemnity cover that can cover, the bounds of their advice. So I know it is a difficult area because I know environmental management specialists it sort of straddles that scientific and legal compliance, but it is, with that experience comes with being able to identify, as Modise said, when it is veering into someone else's expert territory. And it's not about, this is my domain and that is your domain. There's definitely integration and there is definitely overlap, but it's also understanding, when am I exposing myself and my professional indemnity to something that it won't cover?
Mr. Bezuidenhout, you got the answer. Go and study LLB. Got it? All right. Rais Stevens. Yes, Rais, you contacted me based in the Western Cape. You want to make your move back to good old Dubs. So Rais says, hi all, I'm currently working as a hydrogeologist with a BSc in environmental and water science. In order for me to transition into environmental law, is it mandatory for me to study an LLB? Environmental management as part of my studies. Yeah. What do you guys think? I think it's quite obvious what the answer is going to be. Modise?
Look, if you want to practice as a lawyer, and I think we've touched on this earlier on, you will have to get your LLB. And if you want to practice as an attorney, like Fuad, Melissa, you do your articles and you get admitted. Or if you want to come to my side, which is the bar, get LLB as well, then you undertake pupillage, which is a year program. Then you'll practice, and also touches on the professional indemnity that Melissa has stressed on. However, if you want to have your scientific qualification, but you want to now expand your knowledge or horizon, you can still get your LLB. You can be in-house and just advise intel, because now you have your LLB and the scientific qualification. But that would not entitle you to stand in the court of law and or argue a case or prepare or draft papers, because you are non-practicing lawyer. So you can be a non-practicing lawyer, and when I was in corporate, though I was already admitted as an attorney, but I was on the attorney's non-practicing role. When I left corporate, now coming to practice, I'm now re-enrolled into the attorney's role or the advocate's role. So it's managed, it's prescribed, and you cannot cross the lines. The lines are very clear. A person who will have an LLB does not make them a legal practitioner. You just have the qualification. If you want now to practice, get admitted and be on the roll. Thank you.
Melissa, Fuad?
Not really a lot that you can add to that. Modise basically covered everything there. I mean, 100%.
Yo, Modise,
Again, it goes to our discussion.
You're outperforming the other guys here, Modise.
My network's gonna break again. Don't worry, I'll be saved.
we'll have to mute you. No, great stuff, guys. There's another question. Pumezo. I am an environmental law specialist with experience in general litigation practice, and I'm interested in breaking into the environmental law specialized practice. Any advice on how to secure a job or how to source clients in my newly established legal practice? I think every law practitioner, especially the solo law practitioners, I guess every, but more especially the solo law practitioners, have this at the back of their minds, at the front of their minds, on the left and the right side of their minds. How to generate work. Who wants to take on this challenge first?
Not me.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Look, I've already said it. If you've got a practice that is developing and my practice at the bar is still developing, invest in identify people or a person that you can shadow. Follow the cases. You'll see them in reports, in news. And I'm saying if you are already practicing, you go check, be it a magistrate or a high court role. You'll identify matters. And if you're following environmental matters and you spot it, or those that are now in the news, it could be in Venda High Court, Johannesburg High Court, take means to follow those, identify the lawyers that are involved, reach out. And we already said there's ILA, there's IASA, there's the law societies, there's the bars, there's now LinkedIn. Reach out, network first. Get to know the people and the work. Then the work will follow you later. It will not just drop in because of, again, we must understand, there's too many of us in practice. And people build relationships. With me at the back and tell you the senior advocates who trained young advocates and they've built a relationship with those. Me as a newcomer, it's so difficult to break through. I spent 11 years in the corporate learning, but I know I still have to join the queue, run around, get myself established, know the people. So people work with relationships, seniors train the juniors. It's not easy to break through. Now, you'll be frustrated if you think because you've got the masters and the experience from the mines, now you've got an entitlement of the brief landing on your desk. It does not work like that. Be prepared to hustle for free. If it comes, and I'm saying with myself, it's coming from the communities. Though I'm coming from the corporates, the mines, I'm not getting brief from the mines. It's okay. But how do you do? Network, be prepared, and hustle for it. It will come if it comes. But here's another catch. You may have an interest in environmental law, and it's good, and I have it. But practice of a certain area of the law may be the one that comes to you, and you love it. It may be employment law. I know the context is how to become an environmental lawyer. There are many areas of the law that you can become, and I'm saying you can be an employment lawyer because that is coming to you and you love it as well. So let's be open-minded about it. Thank you.
Wow, that's Modise saying like it is. Melissa, do you also want to say it like it is?
I agree, concur with Modise, and I would add read, because environmental law isn't stagnant. Most of us have done studies, not just an LLB, masters, etc. But that has been superseded with a lot of legal developments, and court judgments come out daily. So I would say, as Modise has said, networking is very important, but sometimes, once you get a matter, you have to back that with substantive knowledge, and savvy, and you have to put in the hours and you have to put in the work. And you'll see lots of, and the hustle is real. The hustle is real, whether or not you're at a big law firm or your sole practice. It's always about making people understand the value add that you have to offer. What is your unique insights? What are your unique practical, experiences? And there was something else I wanted to add, and I've lost my own train of thought.
Happens to all of us.
The other thing I was wanting to say is so see, in addition to the networking, and when you network and when you're on LinkedIn and you follow colleagues in the space, you'll see what the other people are doing in building their practices and how, they put out newsletters or case summaries, or how you become visible, how you become a thought leader in your space. And that is sort of part of the networking, you know, becoming known as a specialist or as someone that practices in that space. We all started somewhere, and people still do. And, you know, that's why sort of reading, summarizing, sharing a view, thinking about it, speaking to colleagues, all of those things are important.
So Fuad, you're in a slightly sort of different category. You are not running a solo law practice. Obviously, you're in partnership, but the challenge is still there. How do you source work? How do you get clients? That still remains a challenge in any practice. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's each to their own. I mean, I'm never afraid to reach out to people, even on LinkedIn, or just striking a random chat with someone at a conference or at a meeting, or someone that I might have seen somewhere. There's a lot of events you can attend. There's a lot of content you can put out. So there's various ways to gain clients. But obviously, as you, I don't want to say grow more popular, but as you gain more exposure in the fraternity, people get to know you and people reach out to you with simple questions. And I think something to note as well, or just to remember, like Modise and Melissa said, we all have to do some form of free work. There's going to be a client that calls you and say, Fuad, listen, what do you think about this? Look, I'm not saying do an entire project, do a legal opinion that takes you 10 days, for instance, pro bono. But if someone calls and asks you interesting question pertaining to, say, NEMA, for instance, take that 5 minutes, or take that 10 minutes, take that 15 minutes, meet someone for coffee quickly one morning before you go to work if they want to chat about something. Say, for instance, a client that you've worked with previously, or a client that has been introduced to you by a previous client. Take that 30 minutes, take that 15 minutes, because that 15 or 30 minutes might end up in a year's worth of work just because you took that little bit of time. So that's, yeah, really in a nutshell, my view on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to give my perspective. So I came from the public service, and for my sins, working in the public service, I took a decision that I would immerse myself in the communities that I'm helping, and do exactly what I was paid to do, which is to help the communities, respond to their queries, respond to their questions and their problems, and that's what I did. Obviously, not everybody's going to love you for that, but you know, the strange thing is that when I transitioned to an environmental lawyer and ran my own practice, it was those communities that became my first clients that opened my book of clients in my practice, which is something that I'm very grateful for. So the thing here is about immersing yourself, and you do so in a what's the word I'm using? In an honest way. So immerse yourself in that community. Like if it's labor law, immerse yourself in that network of labor-related issues or communities or whatever it is, and people will realize your worth by you doing your work, you know, in an honest manner. And for me, yeah, that's how that happened. The communities that I helped when I was a public servant became my first clients when I opened my law firm. So it's getting yourself out there and being who you are. Our next question comes from Ruth. Ruth Versfeld. Good day, panelists, and greetings to my fellow participants. I'm currently a final year LLB student and project officer at the Center for Human Rights Litigation and Implementation Unit. I wanted to know your advice when it comes to seeking articles that would focus on environmental laws. I also wanted to know if it is recommended to get a master's degree in environmental law. Interesting question. Yeah, just the other day some random person got in touch with me to ask me for for articles, and obviously advocates, we can't supervise articles, Modise. Yeah, I mean, the question was also, do I need to figure a further qualification, like a postgraduate, to qualify for? I don't think so. But what do you think, Melissa?
Having been enrolled for a master's in environmental law certainly got my foot in the door at a specialist law firm. So if you are looking for that opportunity in a specialist law firm, a master's does set you apart, or some, commitment to self-study, because it is a lot of additional, knowledge to get up to speed with. And at least a master's does give you a baseline of that information. Is it a complete necessity? No. I know of environmental lawyers that have started with firms without a master's and ended up specializing in environmental law, and still do, with many years of experience with an LLB. But it is, the competition is tough out there. And it really is, like Fuad says, it's it's tough. It's not, you don't just submit one application. If you're really lucky, maybe, I don't know. That's certainly not been my experience. I know someone else has commented here that they've tried to apply with the DFFE for a number of roles. I can say that I've done the same. So if you show your commitment and you are able to, and the stars haven't aligned for you in another way, maybe the master's is needed. In an ideal world, maybe not, but it all is about opportunity and where there is an opportunity. But I don't know, maybe you have very strong networking skills and know people at environmental or at firms with an environmental practice, and you're able to secure that articles, and then it's maybe not needed. But I certainly, when I did my master's about 15 years ago, that was my foot in the door. That was my way into the space. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. That maybe turned out to be like more than 2 cents.
That's what.
Yeah, no, it's like Melissa said, it's about getting your foot in the door, and there's so many of us these days that has the qualification. I mean, if you're looking at a list of applicants applying to a firm that specializes in environmental law, the first one you're probably going to look at is the one with that shows the interest in environmental law. Yes, it's easy to say in your CV, I have an interest in environmental law, but there needs to be some form of commitment. That's just my view. But like you said, I mean, if you maybe know someone that's willing to give you an opportunity in a firm like that, you gain practical experience instead of the theoretical experience you gain with your 2 or 3 years of study. So it's all about getting your foot in the door. I would say get the masters if you can, because that will immediately set you apart or give you an advantage, at least from a qualification perspective. Because like I said, there's so many people that apply. You're looking for something that stands out, and that would definitely stand out if you're applying to a firm that specializes in that type of work.
But you said you have a different perspective on this?
I agree with my colleagues. They said it all. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if your undergrad degree is LLB, yes, that master's in environmental law would, as the panelists have said, would give you that extra boost. But if you're like me and have a environmental or science background, that's the other alternative. So if you've done a previous degree in environmental science and then done an LLB, you could use that as leverage. And then we have an interesting comment / question from Mr. Jan, should I say Dr. Jan Hendrik Kiet. And he says, hi, all, thanks for giving your time. Simple question, but he's given us like 3 paragraphs. So a PhD candidate, obviously. It's not a simple question. I'm a botanical specialist with a PhD and love what I do. I also like law and how it is applied. But to put it straight, I hate being in court and not sure I would ever want to get into legal battles. Yeah, join the club, Jan. My advantage is that I have great insight into the environment itself, and such a deeper insight is sometimes lacking where pure law is practiced, understandably so. So maybe I would have an advantage should I incorporate law into what I do. So the question is, what advice would you have for me as someone who wants to find a way to incorporate law more in what I do, but not actually become an environmental lawyer? Now, this guy wants to have the milk and not buy the cow. So what advice? what advice do we have for Dr. Keat? Modise?
Yeah, look, you need that legal qualification, which is LLB. You could be, if you don't want to go to court, people like Fuad and Melissa, they will sit in a law firm. They would advise, they would do transactions. When it comes to litigious and you have to go to court, you now come to my side. You brief counsel. And because you don't want to go to court, even if it's your matter, you can send your colleague or candidate attorney to go with your advocate, right? So, but if you really want to practice and want to understand it, you may, at the beginning of your career, see how it's done, even in the courts. Then gives you that exposure, then you can tone down. Again, if you don't want to go to the court, but you want to understand and have a legal qualification, like I've done, you go and become in-house legal counsel. You advise, you do the transactions. When it's now about to go to court or it becomes litigious, you get to your attorneys in your panel or those you know, you brief external, they will take it over for you, you stay behind. Because I understand that you want to practice law, you want to understand it, but you don't want to litigate. You can do it. Just now get your external to do it, or if you're in a law firm, you stay behind, you just do the transactions and advisory, but you don't go to court. Other people will go for you on your behalf. Thank you.
I understand Jan Hendrik's question a little bit more different. So I think, I mean, we've spoken a lot about the scientist hat and the lawyer hat and making sure we stay in our lanes with our professional indemnity cover. But as I mentioned a bit earlier as well, and I think we've all acknowledged there's definitely a sort of gray area where there's overlap and where the one has to have an understanding of the other and vice versa. And I feel like Jan Hendrik's, but I might be wrong, I feel like his question is more sort of, I want to advance or elevate what I do by, incorporating law a bit more, but not necessarily giving legal advice, not necessarily being a lawyer, not necessarily going to court. So I understand his question is, I don't want to give legal advice, but when I write my reports, it must be such that it's not just scientific, it actually speaks to law or legal principles. And I think there's much value in that. And I think as lawyers, as Jan Hendrik has also said, sometimes pure law forgets about sort of maybe basic scientific environmental management impact principles. And there lawyers can also do a bit more, not to give views on the scientific, but understand it and dissect it in order to enrich the legal opinions that they give. And I think there's definitely scope from a specialist perspective, like a botanist, like when you write your reports, and I mean, between us four, we've reviewed a number of EIA's specialist reports, and there's certain key things that we look out for, and there's sometimes certain key things that we're not sure of. Scientists sometimes write in that language that they understand. And sometimes we have to dissect that and understand and say, okay, but are you saying this? Or how does this talk to the legal requirement? So I definitely think there's scope. on both sides for that sort of area where we intersect to meet each other in the middle and improve and elevate the products that both sides give to clients ultimately. I hope that makes sense.
Fuad, do you also want to dissect Jan
No,
Hendrik's,
that's when Melissa started, that's actually how I read that question as well.
yeah.
He wants to improve himself, especially when it comes to his speciality. And I 100% agree with what Melissa says. I think it will make not easier, but it will make it better for us to sometimes read some of these reports. Because sometimes the reports are quite scientific, and it takes you some time to get through the first few pages even. Just to grasp what the scientist is saying. So yeah, I understand it exactly like Melissa is saying, and I 100% agree. I mean, there's a lot of things he can do to enhance his or to incorporate law more in what he does.
And I don't know about you, Kubin, but like it's a pet peeve of mine if you go through an EIA and there's like 50 pages of regurgitation of the law. I'm like, why?
Yeah, 100%.
There's no integration. It's just like flop, flop, flop. These are the legal provisions. But then when it comes to the impacts and the assessment and how they integrate with what the law is, that there's just a blank. It's just blank. It's just.
Well, we'll have to create
100%,
a totally independent webinar for that, because that's another Pandora's box.
I know that was me giving you opening the door to your EIA.
Guys, episode 2 will obviously will go into EIAs. Maybe the same panel, or maybe we might add a few more to the panel, make it more interesting. Anisha Ramnath wants to say, good day, legal experts. Thank you for the information. I have 13 years mining environmental experience. I have a BSc honors degree in environmental management. I'm currently an environmental specialist focusing on permits and license applications for projects, conducting internal legal compliance audits, and interpreting legislation and providing guidance to the sites. To be able to draft legal opinions, to provide guidance to colleagues, do I need an LLB to do such? I think it's a variation of the other questions that we've had, but maybe Modise, you could restamp your authority on this question.
Thank you, Kuben. Look, you would need that LLB to have a benefit from the learning and the training that comes as you study, as you are a law student. It will help you. But you are already armed with that BSc. That is a top plus. So if you now want to, and we said it's about practice earlier on. So if you are in a space where you are practicing your science in a mining company, through the years, you've learned how the legislations work. You can still give an opinion, especially when it's scientific, where you're not comfortable. And I said earlier on, that was my daily life. I would only stick to my legal opinion. And when I'm not comfortable, I've got scientists next to me, I speak to them. Or they are scientists, they will be comfortable with science, and I'm close to them, they will come to me as legal. So if you want to do both, you'll benefit if you now take time to study law, because now you want to express a legal opinion in addition to your scientific opinion. And yeah, as I'm saying, kudos, you're already armed with the science. You may want to now study law. You'll have both. Thank you.
I'm assuming that you guys are settled on this. We don't need to rehash that question, right? So the other
No, there's just, I suppose. Sorry, Kuben. I suppose there's also just a small nuance to that. I mean, so you are in-house, specialist focusing on permits. Are you internal?
So she wants to give legal.
Is she in-house? Is she an environmental specialist focusing on permits and license applications? Okay, so no, that's external. Because I was going to say, like, if you're in-house and you need to advise your company, it is slightly different. But then still, you know, as Modise has said, it's like, when do you go to the legal department? One has to be careful, and that principle still applies.
If you
Yeah.
want to draft a legal opinion, you have to have a legal background. There's no
Exactly.
two ways.
Yeah. No. But what I was getting at is, if you're within a company structure and they're asking your advice on a permit or licensing application, like, it is a slightly different nuance where you can write a memo, but as soon, you know, advising, this is my perspective, but as soon as it veers into legal, you would have to refer it to the legal department.
Yeah, I mean, Fuad, I think there's a thin line, especially with environmental, because I mean, environmental consultants also, to a certain degree, give legal advice. But if you are giving a legal opinion, it is not only going to be on environmental law. Am I right, Fuad?
Yeah, 100% correct. I mean, the basis of when you start with your opinion, you use the skills and the skills of interpretation that you've been taught or that you've acquired through your LLB and through being an admitted attorney and the experience you've gained. Yes, your opinion is about environmental, or the subject matter is in environmental law, but the basis of it is law, and that's what you studied in your LLB and the experience you gained through your articles and being an admitted attorney. Yes.
Because I mean, you cover things like administrative law, PAJA, for example, the common
Yes.
law, you know, admissibility of evidence. If you go to that state, there may be certain issues where you're dealing with evidence, and so the short of it is, if you are giving legal advice, you must have an LLB. So to you, Anisha, yes, you have to study LLB. I think we're marketing the LLB degree here. I think UNISA and the universities should be paying us a small royalty here.
But also, I feel like the world has enough lawyers. We need more scientists, people.
Well, with so much of injustice in the world, I would argue the opposite. So Nina Bolteel. So Nina says, from a personal perspective, I applied once I got my LLB to as many different law firms, environmental law firms, as I could, and the specialist firms were not interested in my application without the LLM. I subsequently got my LLM, but because I was not able to get a CA position fast enough in an environmental law firm, I had to do my articles through a civil litigation firm. Essentially, my perspective is that the master's degree is helpful in providing the theory and is necessary for a specialized field, but it does not guarantee a position in such a firm. I was even thinking about becoming an advocate and specializing in environmental law by doing pro bono matters in that capacity, but I recognize that I will likely become a very thin advocate. I haven't seen a thin advocate. We are all carrying some but I recognize that I will likely become a very thin advocate if I do not accept civil or criminal or family law briefs, etc. So how do you specialize in this way when you still have to practice generally in order to survive? Seems like a bit of a catch-22. I think we discussed this, guys, and you gave some very good responses. So, and that was in our closed shop. Maybe you can share your perspectives with the attendees. Melissa, let's start with you. Okay, Modise, you want to go? Yeah.
No, come, Melissa. Come. Let's hear from you.
Oh, no, Modise, you go first.
Okay, thank you. Look, I'm at a bar, and I can tell you now, I do have a mixed practice. I don't only wait and call around for people to bring me mining or environmental matters. They all come from all corners, and that's how you build and shape your practice. If you've got networks of your areas of specialization, Yes, you can still come to the bar, but then you have to chase it, and it goes to earlier on what you're saying, the hustling part of it. There are no entitlements. I can tell you of colleagues who are doing mining/environmental law. Actually, they were never been attorneys before, and they never spent 11 years in a mining company like I did. But today they're doing mining related or environmental related. And I said earlier on, practice can come to you while you are waiting or you got interest in that particular area of the law. Another area of the law comes and you enjoy it. You even forget about your environmental law. So be prepared, be patient. But if you believe your area would want to be environmental law, come to the bar and chase it. Or become an attorney and chase it. Create your own fortunes. So yeah, I would leave it there.
Perfect. I don't have much to add. Modise has captured it very well. It is you can't expect things just to land in your lap. We don't live in the world like that. You have to deal with the matters that come across your desk as best possible, and that's how you get the best, widest experience. So don't have in the back of your mind that purpose of I'd like to get those matters. You do the networking, you have to do the homework, you do the reading, but do the best with the matters that you have. You know, those things come when the time is right.
Yes.
Fuad, you're a testament to that, because you do actually, that's what you do.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I mean, to just to add on to that, yes, she's doing general work. Let's call it that. But I'm a firm believer. Before you specialize, you have to know the basics. You have to know. I mean, if your litigation is pertaining to environmental matter, I mean, you need to know how action works. You need to know how motion court works. You need to know the DS periods, for instance. You need to know how the court rules work. So yes, it's all good to specialize, but if you have those basics down and then you specialize, you're in a much better position, I would say, because in every specialization, you're going to use those basics.
Okay, I think we'll just dispense. I think there's just one question and one comment. Marguerite Cronier wants to know, do you have any recommendations on the best universities or colleges to study LLB part-time or online? Or ones rather to avoid? No, I think we'll just stick with any recommendations.
UNISA, part-time.
All right.
You can study UNISA. I'm actually marking the environmental law scripts, so I'm in touch with them. So you can do whatever you're doing, study part-time at UNISA. When with this that are known for full-time, they become so expensive that you're not going to get the benefit. So for me, none competes like UNISA. In my view, I would only recommend UNISA, and they do offer environmental law. As I'm saying, I'm marking the scripts. So yeah, that will be the best place to study your distance LLB.
Yeah, I mean, I did my LLB through UNISA, and the only reason was because I was working full time, and yeah, and I mean, most of the hardworking people are the ones who study through UNISA. It's a challenge. There's a lot of sacrifice, but it's worthwhile. And yeah, I don't know what the others think in terms of studying part-time. Melissa, I don't know if you went through UKZN? No.
No. So, I mean, I did my LLB full time and my master's and my PhDs part time. But on this question, I'm not actually sure what the part-time online offering is of other universities outside of UNISA in South Africa. So I suppose that is probably the offering that's the most well-known and reputable. I'm not really sure if there's another part-time online LLB you can do. But yeah, I mean, part-time study isn't for the faint-hearted.
Especially
But isn't it?
especially an undergrad degree like an LLB. It's
Yes.
there's quite a lot of modules that you have to do. Yeah. Fuad,
If I can add a comment there,
Sorry.
I see there's lots of private institutions that are advertising to be offering LLB, whether full time or online. We had a discussion here at the bar, and we had academics. Traditional universities are still recognized for LLB purposes. So be careful where you want to enroll your LLB. It might be cheaper, it might be convenient with the ones that are coming, and I'm not going to mention their names or criticize, but as the practitioners, we are still traditional, or even law firms. When they hear that I never heard of an LLB from University X, they overlook you, they go to the traditionals. So hence I was quick to say part-time, it's UNISA, but if you feel that there's one that is coming and is brand new in the market, please do your research before you enroll. You must spend 4 years of good investment and time, but when it comes to the real world, you're not being recognized because of you're coming from an unknown part of the world. Thank you.
Margaret, so your answer is UNISA, otherwise do your research very thoroughly. So Dr. Jan-Hendrik Kiet has also has responded. He's great to know what one does not need to go to court. I didn't know that. Melissa, you're spot on. I want scientifically robust results that are legally sound and makes everyone's life easier. Wonderful advice, much appreciated. Apologies for this simple question, not being simple. Oh, yeah. So we have Kumo Lesele. Hi, colleagues. Thanks so much for the webinar. I did my articles with the Center for Environmental Rights. I got exposure to climate change law, mining law, and corporate accountability and transparency for about 3 years and 8 months. I recently got admitted on a non-practicing role. What advice would you give me in diving into the field? What options are available for me to specialize? What options are available for me, especially if I want to specialize in environmental law and considering consulting? Melissa, when I heard consulting, that's right up your practice. So,
I also I didn't mention this earlier, but I fell into consulting also, I would say by accident, because I actually left a big corporate law firm to try and finish my PhD, and then on the sideline started consulting. So that also came with, a network of people asking for help. So it organically happened. But, in this space, for someone post articles with that level of experience, to go on into your own, I think I'd also just say, what we've been saying throughout, there isn't always a clear map or a clear picture of how it's going to happen, or you must do this or you must do that. But with any specialization is you need to surround yourself with knowledgeable sounding boards, mentors. We've said this in different ways. I'm just restating it in another different way. But it is a complicated area of law. When you have the background that you have, you've seen a very specific part of it. And I see this a lot. And I think, Modise, you might also see it, in Fuad, where you guys also guest lecture or teach in some capacity. Sometimes if you have a staunch academic view or a staunch NGO view, there are aspects that you've not had insight to. And you don't necessarily have a holistic picture. So, having come from that background, you might find yourself advising in a very particular way, and you would have to also broaden your horizons and adjust. And like Fuad said earlier, taking the time to connect with someone, have a coffee, get suggestions. Like, you don't obviously have to share client details, but like, this is the question that I'm looking at. How would you approach it differently? Like, I find that, consulting by yourself is very isolating, and you sometimes give the best advice when you surround yourself with knowledgeable sounding boards. And it doesn't have to be within the confines of a firm with a lot of people, but it is with a network of knowledgeable people that you can pick up the phone and contact. And I think, through sort of building that type of network, hopefully, someone could also say, okay, well, I actually need this bit of research done at your level, at this particular rate. And, you get to sort of team up with someone more senior. So, yeah, I mean, or even, I think you would also be very well placed to maybe do some further research. There are so many opportunities. It's not to confine yourself. Like, universities have, very specific research chairs and focus areas, and frequently submit research proposals for different things and are looking for the junior researchers or students to help with things, or help run research projects or do sort of the heavy lifting on some of that. So even if it's not, consulting to the private sector or to companies, think of those avenues and the connections you can build by doing that, getting research contracts from research chairs. They are opportunities. I mean, you're welcome to connect with me, and I can sort of see if I can think of any research opportunities that might suit your knowledge or experience and where you see yourself going. But like my consulting practice hasn't always just been consulting big corporates or for law firms. It is sometimes research contracts and doing some, further academic research. And I find that sort of combination has been extremely fulfilling for me, because I get the base of both worlds. Get that sort of deep theoretical academic engagement with concepts and things, but then also the practical on the ground. And I feel like that's where the best results come, if you sort of see the value from both worlds. Just approaching something from a purely academic or theoretical perspective or a purely practical perspective, I think there's a place for it, but I find sort of operating in the middle, taking the best from both, has been most fulfilling. So it's not just of, oh, I want to consult and I need to target these big clients or these law firms. It's, there's opportunity in different spaces sometimes where you don't expect it, where you least expect it. So be open-minded.
Thanks, Melissa. Matsalwa Baloi is an LLB graduate who chooses not to pursue admission immediately, but is nevertheless passionate about working in mining and environmental companies, navigate opportunities for junior roles in companies or organizations within this field. Oh no, how can an LLB graduate pursue opportunities for junior roles in companies or organizations within the environmental field? He doesn't want to pursue admission immediately, but wants to get into companies in the mining and environmental sphere. Modise, that seems to be right up your alley. But obviously,
Yeah. Thank you, Kuben. My practical experience is that with me, I go to the mining companies through recruitment agencies, and I apply to be in the databases. And I went for several interviews before I could get my first opportunity. So place your CV with recruitment agencies. But my advice is, as I said earlier on, I had friends who went to big corporates when we finished university without being admitted. They get used to the comfort life and the high salaries. Later on, they want to go and get admitted. And you're going to have to drop your lifestyle and salary for you to save articles. So if you would take my advice, be patient and get admitted. Be as an advocate or as an attorney. You got all the wings now to fly anywhere. You can always go to the corporate, change, come to practice, because now you got the ticket. You're not an LLB graduate. You are a legal practitioner. You are being admitted. So be patient, gain your admission, go wherever you want. You can always change. Don't go to corporates, because you may want to now get admission, which means articles, and that may come with their consequences. 100 attorneys, we were told you are slaves. So you don't want to be a slave at some part of your life or when you are old enough. Yeah. Thank you.
Fuad, you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean we've seen the trend now. The moment you let Modise speak first, there's nothing really for me and Melissa to say. He basically covers everything. No, I agree with what Modise says there. 100%.
So yeah, so the message is clear, Matsalwa, is that yeah, you might want to do that LLB, complete it, graduate, serve your articles, or do your pupillage and get admitted. You don't want to be in a situation like Modise has so pointed out, is that you're going to live the high life based on your qualification, experience, and then when you want to get admitted, then you're going to have to start downgrading from a 3-bedroom to a bachelor apartment, downgrading from your car to a scooter, or you don't want to, unless you want to go through that experience, then it's fine. But it's best to graduate, get admitted, and yeah, and then you have more options available going forward. So guys, now I think I'm sure you're tired, but I'm going to hit you with a round of very important questions, and I need quick answers, no thinking. Melissa, one environmental issue you'd fix with a magic wand? She's thinking about it.
One environment. Oh, laws that don't change so frequently to cater for every single eventuality. Having a basic framework that's easy to interpret, easy to understand, basic principles, not being amended every 2 weeks.
Oh God, Fuad, worst environmental offense you've seen disguised as a community upliftment project? That's a trick one.
I thought these
know
were the
the answer
questions
to
where
it.
the answers were going to be whiskey, chocolates,
Yes,
or coffee.
yes. Just eat me with that one again.
Worst environmental offense you've seen, which was disguised as a community upliftment project?
To be honest, I haven't come across a disguise like that, to be honest.
From the public sector, coming from the public sector, I mean, I've worked at the municipality with housing developments, and most low-cost housing is community upliftment, but some of the worst environmental offenses have come out of these projects, and I won't even stop there. Some of the most serious elements of corruption and maladministration have come out of community upliftment projects. Anyway, I answered your question, which is not what I was supposed to do. Modise, as an advocate, you in court, if you could cross-examine any state department, who's first in the dock for you?
The MRE. and the current minister must come to court, must be subpoenaed.
Yikes.
We all know who's the minister there.
Fuad, which South African animal best represents your legal style?
Lion.
Yo. Melissa, what's more unpredictable, the weather in Cape Town or Section 24 outcome of a Section 24G application?
You asked us this earlier, and I'm gonna go with the answer that Modise went with. The weather in Cape Town.
Thanks, guys. I think that's brings the curtains down on a very informative, at least for me, and I'm sure the panel and the attendees that have posed a lot of interesting questions to us, and I'm sure the attendees especially have gained a lot by this this talk. It's been an incredibly enlightening conversation. Modise, Melissa, Fuad, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and for sharing your journeys and experiences with us today. It is clear that becoming an environmental lawyer is a path of passion, dedication, and significant impact. And we've seen that in the way you've answered those questions, that you all are truly passionate about your field. To our attendees, guys, thank you for attending Becoming an Environmental Lawyer. We hope this episode has provided valuable insights and perhaps even inspired some of you to embark on your own journey in this field. So, guys, join us next time for another deep dive into the legal world. Until then, keep learning, keep advocating, and keep protecting our planet. Thanks, guys.